Chapter 41. I am Lin Che's man. Lin Che looked at her own father. Father, how have I been unscrupulous? I had no part to play in this rumor. If you are really honest, you can still make up for it by going to the Chengs and apologizing to them now. They still have not found someone for the marriage. Han Kaiying would rather die than let Lin Li marry, and Lin Yukai could only look at the Chengs give their fortune away to someone else. The thought of it made his heart anxious. Lin Che was in disbelief. She looked at her father mockingly and was unable to fathom how he could still be thinking of that matter now. Father, don't think about this anymore. Don't say that I don't want to. Actually, I already have a boyfriend, so I will not marry anyone else. Lin Che did not mention that she was already married. She only revealed that she had a boyfriend. Lin Yukai was shocked. He looked at Lin Che suspiciously. Are you serious? Lin Che laughed. Why would I lie about something like that? Gu Jingze. Of course not. That is only a rumor. Lin Yukai's eyes turned with disappointment. It was impossible. With her, how could she captivate the eyes of someone like Gu Jingze? Lin Yukai snorted. You better not bring home a poor gigolo from your circle. I will tell you now. I will never agree to it. You better not get cheated too. I don't see how the Chengs are bad. If you enter their family, you become a lady everywhere you go and live a blissful life with endless money to spend. If you want their money so much, why don't you send stepmother to marry then? I am your daughter, but you want to sell me. Lin Che was devastated. She never understood why she was ever born into this family. Lin Yukai's face sank. Han Kaiying had just overheard Lin Che's last words. Lin Che, what kind of attitude is this? I let you into my home to attend the engagement and treat you like family. How dare you say such things to me and your father? Lin Che sneered. Only you know best why you let me return. Anyway, I already have a man. I don't believe the Chengs will still be willing. You both better dismiss this idea of yours. Han Kaiying's face turned red. You shameless girl. I just knew it. You were out there fooling around and you dare say you already have a man. You're still proudly showing off how loose you are. Lin Che already knew that no matter what she did, she was always wrong in their eyes. If she just came back like that, they would say she had no respect for this house. If she tidied herself up before coming back, they would say that she was showing off. Lin Che turned and walked away immediately. However, a quiet voice suddenly sounded. Are you forcing Lin Che to marry someone else? This voice. It was deep, hoarse, but had an air of compassion. Lin Che turned her head to see Gu Jingze behind, dressed in a black suit as he walked over. Gu Jingze's tall stature brought about a king-like aura. His eyes were unwavering and it seemed like nobody could look deeper in. While still in her wheelchair, Lin Che felt his hand pushing behind without much resistance. Lin Che did not expect him to be here. Nobody expected him to be here. Lin Che did not even tell him that she would be coming here. After all, they were only married because of a contract. She did not want to bother him with her personal matters. Looking up, her eyes met his deep, dark eyes that seemed to be staring into hers. He then raised his eyes and looked at Lin Yukai and Han Kaiying with obvious contempt. Han Kaiying glared at Gu Jingze and asked rudely, where are you from? Gu Jingze nonchalantly glanced over Han Kaiying. His voice was cold and although he restrained it, his voice was still undeniably sharp. Is this your stepmother? He completely ignored Han Kaiying and lowered his head to ask Lin Che. Lin Che looked at Han Kaiying and said, Han Kaiying indignantly pointed her finger at Gu Jingze. Ha! You must be Lin Che's gigolo, aren't you? Who allowed you to be here? Gu Jingze held onto the wheelchair and looked at Han Kaiying. Without batting an eyelid, he replied, it's an engagement. Of course, the family must attend. Since you invited Lin Che, I have to come along, am I not right? Lin Che figured Han Kaiying must not have realized who Gu Jingze is. Lin Che would never have imagined that such a perfect person existed. First, he was the cream of the crop. He would never have been within her reach and neither would she have tried. Second, although reporters tried to take pictures of him secretly, they were not successful. He was always surrounded by too many people protecting him and never giving them a chance to leak out photos. Such an elusive person, people could only hear of him but they never saw him. Han Kaiang took one good look at Gu Jingze. He was indeed not bad looking. Maybe he was also a celebrity. Han Kaiang snorted and said, "Who do you think you are to claim to be family? If you want to marry and take away our Lin Che, you should at least get our approval, which we have not given you." "We will definitely not." Gu Jingze replied bluntly, his voice lacking warmth, "I do not need approval from anybody for who I want to marry." "Ha, you're too arrogant. She is part of the Lin family and she is our daughter, not some cheap thing you can take away any time. Tell me first, what is it that you do? How much do you earn in a month? Do you have a house? Are you local? Do you have a car? How much dowry have you prepared for us? Let me tell you that our minimum dowry is 1 million yuan. If you can't meet that, don't think about marrying her. For all these years she's been eating here, living here, and using the privileged title of Miss Lin. So much extravagance. It will certainly not be for free." Gu Jingze repeated, 1 million yuan. Han Kaiang asked, "What's the matter? Can't afford it? If you can't afford it, then get lost." At this moment, Lin Yukai was tugging onto Han Kaiang from behind. Looking at Gu Jingze with excitement in his eyes as if he wanted to appease the man, he said, "Are you really our Lin Che's boyfriend?" Gu Jingze looked at Lin Che, who was biting her lip and looking at him sheepishly. Her eyes shone like lakes reflecting the starlight, softly moving. Gu Jingze replied, "Yes." Lin Yukai laughed. "This Lin Che didn't tell us she had a boyfriend all along. She should have said it sooner." Chapter 42. You are my wife. Lin Che was stunned. She looked up at Lin Yukai, who had suddenly seemed to change. What was he trying to do? Why did his attitude completely turn? Gu Jingze continued looking at Lin Yukai condescendingly. "We only just got together, so I'm not in a hurry to visit her home with her." "Oh, but we welcome you anytime. The sooner the better." Lin Yukai laughed loudly. "Lin Che has always been the cause of our worries. She is still young and immature. In the future, she will understand that all we have done is for her own good. Now, she is under your care." Gu Jingze lowered his head and held her hand delicately. Lin Che lifted her head to follow his gaze. Gu Jingze said plainly, "Lin Che is the purest, loveliest and most beautiful girl I've ever met. Being with her makes me very happy. Taking care of her is my duty." Lin Che's heart skipped a little. Looking up at Gu Jingze, she had never thought that he would help her this way. She was extremely touched. No one had ever treated her so nicely. Lin Yukai's eyes flashed at Gu Jingze, gradually becoming humbled. Han Kaiang was not happy to see her husband humbling himself to a gigolo like that. It was unimaginable. Gu Jingze began to push Lin Che. Lin Che's leg was injured because of the car accident. It has not healed yet and she needs plenty of rest. If there's nothing else, I will bring her back to rest." Lin Yukai immediately replied, Of course, of course. Please go ahead, right this way." Gu Jingze glanced scornfully at Han Kaiang one last time. As he was pushing Lin Che away, Han Kaiang gritted her teeth. What kind of attitude was that? How dare he behave so proudly in front of her? From afar, Qin Qing watched as Lin Che left with a handsome but cold-looking man. His heart shook a little. Who was that guy? Qin Qing looked on as that man pushed Lin Che, appearing very considerate. With curiosity on his face, Qin Qing walked towards them while overhearing Han Kaiang angrily lashing out at Lin Yukai. What the hell are you doing? Why were you all over that gigolo, groveling at his feet? Han Kaiang was such a disgrace. Lin Xiangtian glared at Han Kaiang. That was no ordinary man. Han Kaiang retorted, yeah, he looks decent, but Qin Qing is also good-looking and even richer than him. Quote. Lin Yukai snorted, see, you didn't even notice that he had a ring on his finger. That ring is not something you see on just anybody. Ha, it's just a ring. Why would a man be donning jewelry anyway? Han Kaiang said indignantly. Lin Yukai replied, you know nothing. I've seen that ring on someone before. He was wearing it openly on television. Who? Which celebrity? Han Kaiang thought. Since it appeared on television, it had to be a celebrity. Lin Yukai's eyes narrowed. The president. Han Kaiang's jaw dropped as she blurted out, that's impossible. Are you crazy? You must have seen the wrong thing. Just then, Qin Qing walked over from behind. Hearing them mention the president's ring, he asked seriously, "Uncle, Auntie. What are you talking about? The president indeed wears a ring. Because he's a family man, he wears a ring as his family's symbol and he wears it everywhere he goes. Just now, that man was part of the Gu family. Until today, there was only one person in the Gu family whose photos have never been taken before, and that was the elusive Gu Jingze. Don't tell me that man pushing Lin Che was Gu Jingze." That one sentence threw everybody into silence. I'm 90% sure. Lin Yukai was even more certain now after hearing the same speculation from Qin Qing. Han Kaiying was unconvinced. "That's impossible. You both are thinking too much. Just look at how slutty Lin Che is. How could she ever hook such a big fish? You think too highly of her." Of course, Han Kaiying refused to believe it. It was impossible. A beauty like Lin Li being able to marry Qin Qing was already the envy of many. Why would a slut like Lin Che be able to meet such a rich and capable man? She would rather die than to believe that it was true. Qin Qing also felt confused. So, how did they know each other? Han Kaiying said directly, "Humph. Even if that was him, he must only be toying with Lin Che. She has become daring now, hooking up with Gu Jingyu and now with another man. Is she so motivated after seeing Lin Li that she's willing to sacrifice herself for money? And you still want to encourage her, Yukai? When she decides to stop fooling around, she's not only going to offend others. She will implicate us as well." With her shoulders squared, she looked as if she was going to explode like a firecracker. As Qin Qing listened to Han Kaiying's words, he looked gravely at the direction in which the man and Lin Che left. People at the side were looking strangely at Lin Che and Gu Jingze. Curious discussions filled the air. Who is the man going with Lin Che? Indeed, I've never heard of him, but he is so handsome. Those eyes are so enchanting. I think he's even more handsome than today's groom. Lin Li heard the discussion, but only turned around when she heard how someone was more handsome than the groom. Lin Che was with that man. Lin Li's heart hardened. This Lin Che, she definitely came with an agenda today. She was here to steal the spotlight. Gu Jingze continued pushing Lin Che until they came to a spot where there were few people. Only then did Lin Che let out a sigh of relief. Looking up at Gu Jingze, she asked, "What brings you here?" Gu Jingze replied, "There's a happy occasion in your family. As your husband, I have to come take a look, don't I?" Looking behind, he could still see Qin Qing's silhouette. In his heart, he could not understand why Lin Che would like someone like that. He was only a pretty boy. Did Lin Che like this type of man? While thinking, Gu Jingze's face tensed up even more. Lin Che replied, "It is only my sister's engagement." "And the engagement of the man you like," Gu Jingze said in contempt. Lin Che replied without hesitation, "Hey, it's not like that." Qin Qing, wasn't that his name? Gu Jingze looked at her. Lin Che's face darkened slightly. She reluctantly admitted, "That was in the past. In any case, as your husband, I should be with you at an event like this." Lin Che said quietly, "There's no need for that." "It's all right, I'm your husband." Gu Jingze pushed her towards the banquet area. Lin Che reminded him, "Only on paper." Gu Jingze said, "For every day we're not divorced, you are still the woman betrothed to me as my wife. Legally and morally, you are my wife, so I should be here." Lin Che lifted her head up. With his words, she felt warmth slowly trickling into her heart and she felt so full. Chapter 43, Clothes Tangled Up. Then, Lin Che saw the movement of reporters. "Reporters are coming. No, I have to leave now. I was surrounded by them just now." Lin Che had little experience with reporters. She still did not know how to handle them. She did not know what to say and was afraid of saying the wrong things that might affect her career. Gu Jingze looked and said, "We can hide inside. Let's go." As he said this, he glanced over at his men to go over and take a look. Under the discreet protection of his guards, the two of them went deeper in. Lin Che was relieved that no reporters followed them. "Luckily, we lost them. I wouldn't know what to do otherwise." Gu Jingze looked at her silently and thought that if the hotel not been under the Gu family's name and surrounded by his people, she could never have escaped. It was not that the reporters did not follow her. They were stopped. Soon, they found a room in the hotel to rest. Gu Jingze said, "I've asked for the staff to bring some food. You should have some." "That's great, Gu Jingze. You're too good." She raised her head towards Gu Jingze, her face filled with gratitude. Gu Jingze knew that she was putting on an act, but he was secretly satisfied. "Since you know how good I am, then treat me better," he replied and pushed a plate in front of her. Sitting in a wheelchair was inconvenient. When Gu Jingze pushed the plate in front of her, she looked at him with greater happiness. She did not hate this man all the time. Lin Che ate a few pieces of food while Gu Jingze's phone rang. He went over to pick it up. On the other end of the line, the security guard said, "Sir, Lin Yukai wanted to look for you just now. We stopped him." Expressionless, Gu Jingze glanced over to Lin Che. When he put down the phone, he saw Lin Che fidgeting around and seemingly tugging at her clothes. Gu Jingze asked, "What's wrong?" Lin Che struggled to untie the ribbon at the back. Defeated, she grumbled, "I think my back is all tangled up." Gu Jingze shook his head and went over to her. "Okay, seeing as you are dumb and clumsy, let me give you a hand." Lin Che gave in. "All right, you're the smart one," he said. "Look at how silly you are." He took a closer look to find that the ribbon was stuck in the wheelchair. No wonder it was hard for her. He picked out the ribbon and said, "Nobody asked you to wear a dress so difficult to wear." Lin Che felt his hands moving around, occasionally touching her back and making it hard to control herself. Pretending not to feel anything, she snorted, "It's an engagement. I can't not wear something formal. Also, I am your wife now. Surely, I have to give you face. See this dress? My company let me borrow it. It's branded." Gu Jingze's face blackened. "If you have no clothes, I could have bought them for you. Why borrow from your company? That would be troublesome." "Is it troublesome, or is it because you didn't want to tell me you were going to the engagement party of the guy you like?" Gu Jingze said as his grip tightened. The more he thought about how determined she was to attend the party, the more uncomfortable he felt. Lin Che felt a pain in her back. She turned angrily to him and said, "Hey, if you don't want to help me, don't. You're hurting me." "I'm sorry. I didn't realize." He too was confused by his own thoughts. He kept his head down and continued undoing the ribbon with more care. Lin Che said hesitantly, "Hey, why is your head down? Is your illness acting up again?" She remembered him telling her that if he got too close to women, he would develop several allergic reactions including vomiting and rashes. Gu Jingze said, "How could it be? I'm not afraid of touching you and getting sick. I would never embarrass myself in front of you." Gu Jingze continued, "Speaking of embarrassment, I have seen a lot of it on your side." Lin Che glared at Gu Jingze, "The pleasure is all mine." She had been drugged, disgraced, and made drunk by him. He really had seen everything. Lin Che thought that Mo Hilling was definitely nothing like that. No wonder he loved Mo Hilling and not her. Women should keep their distance from men. After all, women need to upkeep their image. Otherwise, which man would ever love them? Especially Gu Jingze. Given his status, he must have come across plenty of elegant ladies. Gu Jingze looked seriously at her zipper. It was so entangled that it was going to be hard to unzip. As he worked on the zipper intensely, he could not help but notice with his head bent down that he was facing her fair and tender neck. The fabric below moved around while light shone softly at the front. He remembered her telling him that her chest was shaped like two peaches. Looking at it, indeed it was. Although the blue fabric was covering most of it, the top half of her chest was still obviously showing and slightly moving. From that angle, he could see a large part of her bare back. Her skin was soft and smooth. It seemed to be poreless except for a layer of extremely fine hair on the surface like a baby's skin. His throat felt unexpectedly hot. He shifted his eyes away but could not help feeling bothered. However, he seemed to grow more anxious as his hands fumbled more. He was frustrated that he just could not detangle it. Forcefully, he shouted, "Shit! It won't budge." With one forceful pull, the dress let out a rip sound. It was torn. Lin Che could not believe what just happened. She held her dress and silently lifted her head at Gu Jingze. She was annoyed and shouted. She felt the air conditioner blowing at her bare skin. It made her uncomfortable. What have you done, Gu Jingze? How is this helping? Gu Jingze was also vexed. His ears turned red as he did not know what to do. A large part of the dress fell off, revealing parts of her body. However, it made her look even more attractive. Her body seemed to shine through the light, showing her fine baby-like hair. Nobody could resist her. His heart jolted as if something manipulated it. She turned her head to him, eyes staring like daggers into Gu Jingze's. The dress is ruined. Do you have any idea how much it cost? Gu Jingze replied angrily, I will pay you back. Humph, you'd better. Gu Jingze glared at her and picked up his phone. Get me a latest formal gown, one with my wife's measurements, Gu Jingze said as he looked at Lin Che, who was staring at him begrudgingly with her big eyes and holding onto her clothes. Her chest was already big, but with her hands held against it, it looked even bigger. Gu Jingze's eyes seemed to be lost as he looked at her. She frowned and turned away. This idiot. Lin Che had no other choice but to wheel herself into the bathroom. She found a bathrobe and put it on. Chapter 44. My wife does not concern you. Gu Jingze turned around to see her walking out in a bathrobe. He could not stop looking at her. Lin Che said, I had no choice but to wear this. Seriously, this is all your fault. Did you do it on purpose? To think that my dress could be ruined like that. Gu Jingze could only stare at her in her bathrobe with the sash resting loosely around her waist. If he had not known this woman's intelligence, she would not have been capable of acting so naturally seductive. He felt that she was being deliberate. If she was only wearing a bathrobe, that would mean that underneath was only some lingerie. Gu Jingze's body grew hot. Staring at her in her robes, he did not want to look away. He kept thinking about her skin and her loose outfit. Reaching in would be so easy. Gu Jingze shook his thoughts away as he heard the sound of the door outside. Lin Che said, the clothes are here already. Go bring them in quickly. Gu Jingze nodded and looked at Lin Che before going to open the door. The room was a suite with a bedroom inside and a living room outside. Gu Jingze closed the bedroom door and sighed heavily before walking towards the main door. However, to his surprise, it was a man with jet black hair and pale face. Qin Qing. Qin Qing saw Gu Jingze and his eyes jumped to look inside the room. When he could not see Lin Che, he turned his eyes back to Gu Jingze. Lin Che's relationship with him was fishy. Hesitantly, he asked, is Lin Che here? Although the person in front of him made Qin Qing feel slightly jealous, he could not help but look down at the ring on his finger. At a closer look, his eyes lit up. That indeed looked like the Gu family's ring. Somehow, he just did not want to lower his guard in front of this man. Thus, the intensity in his eyes increased as he said, I am Lin Che's friend. Gu Jingze stood there half a head taller than Qin Qing. His pair of dark eyes were unfathomable and endless like the night sky, deep and unobtrusive. His eyes swept over Qin Qing. Gu Jingze could not understand what made Lin Che so drawn to him. What kind of taste in men did she have? Did she really like this type of pretty boy? Somehow, one was Gu Jingyu and now the other one was Qin Qing. They were both just pretty boys. Gu Jingze's voice was cold and proud. Although he was being a gentleman, he had a high aura that was not to be messed with. Lin Che is inside, but she's busy. Busy? Qin Qing asked suspiciously, tell her it's me. She will see me. Gu Jingze's slender fingers touched his nose, his eyes surrendering, she's not exactly busy. She's just not wearing clothes right now so I can't open the door for you. Qin Qing was shocked. Seeing Qin Qing's expression, he continued, it was all my fault. I was careless. I ruined her dress and I've asked my men to bring her some clothes. So for now, it's really not convenient for her to come out. Even though those words were concealed, Qin Qing understood. Revealing a hint of awkwardness, Qin Qing never thought that this man in front of him and Lin Che would have that kind of relationship. Qin Qing replied, you may not be aware, but Lin Che and I go way back. We've known each other for many years. He could not help but feel hostile towards Gu Jingze. Oh, Lin Che told me, Gu Jingze said softly. She has mentioned it to me. I know you may be powerful and can do anything you want, but Lin Che is a simple girl. I don't want her to get hurt. So if you aren't serious about her, I will definitely not take this lying down. Like what Han Qiang said earlier, even if Gu Jingze had a relationship with her, he would simply toss her aside once he got sick of her. It made Qin Qing upset. In his heart, it was not that Gu Jingze was not an equal match to him or that Gu Jingze was playing with Lin Che. Instead, he wondered if Gu Jingze had cheated her into being with him. Gu Jingze never thought that he would one day be threatened by Qin Qing. Looking at Qin Qing, he said, if you are warning me as a friend, I'll have you rest assured that my relationship with her is completely legitimate. We have mutual feelings and trust. There are no secrets between us and there is a commitment between us that will not be violated. What he said was true, but that was not all there was. Gu Jingze's expression changed to something more threatening. As he looked at Qin Qing, he said, however, if you are warning me as a man, I'll remind you that Lin Che is now my woman. His sharp expression was like a sword that made Qin Qing feel a great threat at once. In Qin Qing's heart, his dislike for Gu Jingze grew even more. Then, a service staff arrived with 2 pieces of clothing. Sir, your clothes are here. Gu Jingze's expression softened as he said to the staff, just bring them in. The logo on those clothes did not go unnoticed by Qin Qing. A high-end brand, each piece of clothing cost at least tens of thousands. Gu Jingze looked distantly at Qin Qing, if there's nothing else, I'm going back in. Without giving Qin Qing time to reply, he closed the door immediately. You, quote. Qin Qing looked at the closed door in anger. He was not happy to get the cold shoulder after coming all the way here. He had an even more unreasonable distaste for Gu Jingze. Gu Jingze took the clothes in. Lin Che was still waiting inside. When she saw Gu Jingze finally return, she asked, were you talking to someone at the door? The hotel room was soundproof and she dared not step out. She could only hear a murmur of voices, but she didn't know what was going on. Gu Jingze nodded, yeah, there was a mad dog but I had it taken away. He was not someone who would be mean to strangers. He did not know Qin Qing at all. However, he felt resentful upon thinking how curt and direct his words were. Lin Che laughed and said in amazement, a dog in a hotel. How did that ever happen? It was a mad dog. Mad dogs like to run around poking their nose in everything. He then handed the clothes to her, go put them on. They are your size. Lin Che looked down at the clothes. They were beautiful and looked very exquisite. Wow, aren't these expensive? She said. Gu Jingze replied, I'm not sure. Lin Che smiled at Gu Jingze, these are beautiful. They look grand. Thanks, Gu Jingze. Who knew that being your wife could make me as grand as you too? Not bad. He only thought how cute she was trying to look charming. For the first time, her simple compliments made Gu Jingze feel bashful and happy. Chapter 45. The hotel brings about a different atmosphere. Gu Jingze said, you're going to drool all over the dress. Lin Che laughed and wiped the corners of her mouth. She said, I'm not drooling. Gu Jingze looked at her silently, can't you be a little more ladylike? Lin Che lifted her head, in what way am I not ladylike? Gu Jingze replied, such a money grubber. Lin Che snorted. It did not matter to her. She patted her dress greedily. What's the matter? I can be pretentious in front of others but I don't have to put on a front with you. If I acted a little more proper, shy, pitiful, or classy, would that make you fall in love with me? She said as she looked at Gu Jingze with indignance. Gu Jingze glared at her quietly. Perhaps it was because there was no need to pretend, so there was no cause for hatred. Lin Che walked into the bathroom, eager to put the dress on. She came out donning a loose, yellow dress. Fresh and refined, she looked so bright like sunlight. Gu Jingze's eyes lit up as he saw how different she looked. Lin Che twirled slowly, making her skirt bloom like a flower. She looked like the sun. Lin Che asked, how do I look? Gu Jingze hesitated slightly, you look decent. Upon hearing that, Lin Che said, expensive clothes are really different. She happily sat back in her wheelchair. Gu Jingze thought to himself, how ignorant. He was complimenting her but she did not realize it. She was such an endearing fool. Soon, Gu Jingze wheeled her out and they left the hotel. Lin Che said, this hotel is nice. It must be expensive, right? Without looking at her, Gu Jingze replied, it belongs to the Gu family. There's no need to pay. Lin Che immediately reacted and turned her head back to look at the grandeur of the hall. It must have been at least a few stars. 5 star. 7, Lin Che corrected herself. Any hotel under the Gu family is 7 stars. Lin Che regretted not staying longer. Damn, you should have told me earlier. I have never stayed in such a grand hotel. I could have at least stayed one night. It's free anyway. Gu Jingze replied, if you want, we can turn back right now. Quote. It was just a remark, but she looked up at Gu Jingze and said, if we turn back, are we going back together? I'm not used to staying in hotels. It's not safe. Hey, that's impossible. Weren't you staying in a hotel when I first met you? How else had she been able to drug him that time? Gu Jingze looked at her indifferently. Yes, it was precisely because of someone that he no longer felt hotels were safe no matter how secure they were. Since then, I don't stay in hotels anymore, he said as his eyes swept across her. Lin Che laughed dryly. So it was because of her. Lin Che laughed awkwardly and quickly changed the topic, well, since you've already stayed in a hotel with me, there's nothing to be afraid of. We have a legitimate relationship now. Staying at home and staying in a hotel are different experiences. She shifted her body to lean against his. Gu Jingze tilted his head, why stay in the hotel when we have our own home? Lin Che raised her head and rolled her eyes, old couples need a little excitement in their lives. Don't you think hotels are filled with energy and mystique? Gu Jingze looked at her pursed lips, her eyes full of life in her suggestive tone. His heart wavered. His gaze fell uncontrollably onto her chest. The small slit revealed the soft curves of her chest. She had no idea how tantalizing it was. He frowned and pushed Lin Che, no. Well, then the car will do too. It's actually even more exciting. The constricted space, people walking about outside, the risk of someone discovering what's going on. Gu Jingze felt like cracking her head open to see what kind of rubbish filled it. However, as her eyes narrowed excitedly, his mouth felt dry. The chauffeur in front saw the way they looked at each other. It was as if they were about to catch fire. He silently wondered what exactly this couple was doing. Were they really planning to do something here? He was still there and he was a living person. However, no matter what they were going to do, he was a chauffeur. He had been trained vigorously and he was not going to utter a word. Although, he really did not want to see anything. Fortunately, Gu Jingze only reached out to push Lin Che again, awkwardly mentioning the opening in her clothes. Lin Che smiled and said, hey, Gu Jingze, why is your face so red? Gu Jingze shot a glance at her to stop her from talking. Lin Che laughed loudly and said, whoa, are you being shy, Gu Jingze? Who knew you'd have such a pure side? Shut up. Don't tell me you've never done anything like that with Miss Mo. She tugged at his arm. Gu Jingze's face darkened, you think everyone is so shameless like you? Lin Che shut her mouth. Very well, this Miss Mo was the best. His expression sank upon thinking of Mo Hilling. Lin Che noticed and tugged him, all right, don't be angry. I was only joking. While leaning against him, she sighed and said, I know very well how you and Miss Mo love each other, yet you're unable to be together. She's right there but you can't hold her in your arms. Oh, what a forbidden love. Now that I think about it, I do empathize with Miss Mo. She must be missing you every day. Gu Jingze's expression sank even more. Lin Che seemed to be unaware of what she was saying, you too, you could have spent time with Miss Mo instead of coming to find me since you're so free. You could have been enjoying a candlelit dinner with her right now. Gu Jingze looked at her, how thoughtful of you. Maybe she deserved a Best Wife award. But of course, What are we to each other? Since we're living together, I have a duty to share your burden. It's all right. You can tell me anything you're upset about. I will help you ease your worries and make you feel better so I don't have to look at an unhappy face every day. This way, I will also be happy. It's a win-win situation. There's no need. If I wanted a counselor, I would have looked for a professional. But professionals would cost money. Since I've already used so much of your money, you might as well make your money's worth. Don't worry, you can totally treat me as a doctor. Quote. Lin Che continued, I'm serious. Oh right, that Dr. Chen. How much does it cost to invite him home? Lin Che thought that the doctor was rather skilled. He must have been earning tens of thousands a month, judging by Gu Jingze's wealth. Gu Jingze replied, 30 million yuan annual salary. Quote. Lin Che said, my dear, you can hire me, really. I'm not as expensive. I'll come whenever and wherever. I will keep your secrets safe. I'm responsible and we're husband and wife. Blood is thicker than water. Chapter 46. She is the key grooming subject of the company. The word, dear, stunned him a little, but looking at Lin Che's greedy face, he returned to his normal self. All because of money. This Lin Che, could she not show more humility? I'm serious. I wouldn't tell a single soul even if you committed arson or murder. After all, we're in the same boat, aren't we? Lin Che said excitedly. Gu Jingze glanced at her. I feel like strangling someone to death, but because of laws and ethics, I can't. You can't be that violent. Who makes you want to do that? His gaze engulfed her whole body. No matter how dumb Lin Che was, she quickly understood. It was her. She knew that her existence had prevented him and Mo Hilling from being together, but there was no need to harbor such evil thoughts about her. Gu Jingze, why are you in such a hurry to kill me when there's no point? Think about it. If you kill me, it'll be irreversible and you'll become a criminal. If we live peacefully now, I'll get to go my own way and you'll go yours in a few years. Then, you can be with your Miss Mo happily ever after. Isn't that better? There's no need to go through all that trouble, right? Gu Jingze took a deep breath and looked in front of him to let the chauffeur know to pick up the pace. If he continued talking with Lin Che in this confined space any longer, her stupidity might drive him mad. Upon reaching home, Gu Jingze hurriedly got out of the car. He watched as Lin Che struggled to get out while the chauffeur hastily took out her wheelchair. He shook his head and forced himself to calm down as he walked back to help her into the wheelchair. Later that night, Lin Che sat in her room looking at her phone and reading the news that was already reporting on Lin Li's engagement party. From the report, the party looked amazing and enviable. Lin Che read the comments below with many saying how beautiful Lin Li looked and how handsome her husband was. She sighed and turned off the comments. Lying down, she checked her Weibo. It was always filled with discussion, so Lin Che turned off the topic. However, she came across the latest Weibo thread, which was unusually long and active. She opened it to see. The thread began with a message saying, although I do not think you deserve our Gu Jingyu, he likes you. So as you feathers, we will give you our blessings. Everybody knew that Gu Jingyu's fans called themselves you feathers. Lin Che was puzzled. What did it mean that he liked her? Another comment followed, are they really together? Congratulations. Please treat our Jingyu well. He is so pure and hardworking. Please don't hurt him. As Lin Che read on, she felt that something was not right. Just then, Yu Minmin called her. As soon as Lin Che picked up, she heard Yu Minmin say, Lin Che, what's going on? You're together with Gu Jingyu. Who's together with who? Lin Che had no clue what had happened. Gu Jingyu just posted on Weibo. You didn't see it? Of course, Lin Che did not know. Everybody is going crazy. Look at what he said. It seems like he has declared his relationship with you and told everyone to leave you alone. I really? Lin Che said, let me take a look. She quickly hung up and checked Gu Jingyu's Weibo. There, she saw a long message that was posted barely a few minutes ago. He wrote, from the beginning until now, I've always worked hard and gave my all. I was afraid to disappoint my fans, my company, and all my friends and family who have supported me. There was never a moment when I was living for myself. But now, I wish to live for myself. As such, I hope you all will support us. Lin Che immediately started reading the comments that followed. Some people who joined in the hot topic said, "Poor Jingyu. Let's all support him. Seeing Jingyu suffer like this breaks my heart. Regardless of your decision, I will always trust and support you. Celebrities are human too. They need privacy. We only take note of your work, and as long as you're good, it doesn't matter who you choose to be with. We will always support you." Lin Che felt like she was going crazy. The tabloids and Weibo publicized the news, and it said, Gu Jingze's message hints at a declaration of his relationship with fellow actress Lin Che. Lin Li's engagement that was all over the tabloids was now pushed to the bottom with this major news. Lin Che's forehead wrinkled up. She felt absolutely helpless. Lin Che wanted to brush off the comments after receiving hateful ones. Although most of the fans were much more courteous to her because of Gu Jingze, there were still many who expressed their anticipation for her to get dumped. She was not even with him. How could she get dumped? The next day, Lin Che quickly rushed over to her company. Yu Minmin looked at her and said, "You don't have to do anything now. The company is handling everything. You better not say anything carelessly or you might make matters more complicated." Lin Che said quietly, "I have nothing to say. I don't even know what I can say. There is nothing going on at all. Is Gu Jingze trying to drag me down?" Yu Minmin was worried that she might want to admit the same thing in order to grab the spotlight and make matters worse. The newbies who were starting to get famous always had this kind of issue. They wanted the fastest way up. As soon as there was a chance to be in the news, they would do anything just to gain some fame and, in the process, complicate things. However, Lin Che had no such intentions. She seemed totally dumbfounded. Yu Minmin believed that she really did not think that way. With this, there was no cause for concern. Yu Minmin smiled comfortingly at her. "It's a good thing. See, isn't everyone supporting you and Gu Jingze? The key point is the fact that there is nothing between us. What nonsense are they supporting?" Yu Minmin thought how pure this lady was. She had no motives whatsoever. She had a little more admiration for Lin Che. Patting her shoulder, she said, "Gu Jingze might just be doing you a favor. Anything to do with Gu Jingze will surely blow up. Just look at what happened to Lin Li's engagement. It made one headline, but in the end, all that money went down the drain. I think she's the one who's vomiting blood right now." Lin Che sighed. She had no experience in dealing with scandals. Best to leave it to the company. The other smaller celebrities were spiteful as they watched Yu Minmin personally walk Lin Che out. Who knew she'd become this famous? Yeah, it seems like she's gained importance in the company. What exactly does Gu Jingze see in her? Maybe it's better to live, everyone was discussing maliciously. Chapter 47. Gu Jingze said it has nothing to do with me. As the news became so huge, Lin Che could feel all eyes on her when she got to the scene. Upon seeing Lin Che arrive, Director Fu quickly called her. "Ah, Mrs. Gu is here." Lin Che said annoyed, "What Mrs. Gu? Hasn't Gu Jingze already admitted that you are his wife? That makes you Mrs. Gu. Bastard. There's nothing going on. Watch your mouth. There are reporters everywhere." Reporters were everywhere. If they caught a word, she dared not imagine what would be in the headlines the next day. The entire crew had already acknowledged their relationship. No matter what she said, it would be of no use. Director Fu proceeded to give her a chair. Come, come. Mrs. Gu cannot sit on such a small chair. That is for last-minute actors. We should have a proper seat for you. Come, lie over here. This is all yours." Lin Che felt like punching him. "Are you trying to sabotage me?" There was a clear hierarchy in the crew. Small actresses like Lin Che dared to not invite attention. Big, comfortable lounge chairs like that were reserved for the big stars. Lin Che was content with finding a space for her own foldable chair as usual. Director Fu laughed loudly and said, "It's the director's orders. Nobody will dare to object. Anyway, Lin Che, it's time for you to start getting used to it. You're already almost beating Sister Fei Ran in the headlines. You're no longer an unknown minor actress." As he said, Director Fu forced her onto the chair. Lin Che's mouth twitched as she sat there. It was indeed much more comfortable than her own foldable chair. Waiting for a scene was tiring. However, being able to lie there in comfort made a whole lot of difference. The actress at a similar level as Lin Che witnessed everything and was unhappy. She looked in Lin Che's direction with jealousy burning in her eyes. Too bad it was Lin Che that Gu Jingze fell for. At the start, she thought that Lin Che deliberately caused all this. Now that Gu Jingze admitted on his own accord, there was nothing anybody could say. They could only say that Lin Che was one lucky girl. Just then, Gu Jingze entered late. He immediately saw Lin Che lying there using her phone and walked over to her, not caring about his agent's objections. Everybody's eyes followed this newly formed yin-yang concoction. Lin Che heard some noise and looked up to see Gu Jingze smiling devilishly at her. The nerve of him to walk over like that. She wanted to punch him. "Hey, you're early," he greeted her with a smile. Lin Che got up and said, "Gu Jingze, you. What's the meaning of your Weibo post?" Gu Jingze raised his hands innocently and said, "What did I say?" "What did you say? Didn't you say in your latest post, something about loneliness, something about lack of freedom, something?" "Oh, that, well, it's just a normal Weibo post. Just an expression of my feelings to gain some sympathy," Gu Jingze said nonchalantly and sat down. Lin Che jumped up and raised her voice at Gu Jingze, you. Is that the normal you? Didn't you see the news?" "I did." He raised his head and glanced up at Lin Che, who seemed like she was going to burst with anger. He thought it was cute. Just as she thought, he really did do this on purpose. Gu Jingze said helplessly, "You know how reporters love imagining things. I can't help it. Look, I didn't even mention your name and yet they drew a connection to you. I never said anything about a girlfriend and yet they thought of that too. What can I do?" Lin Che looked at Gu Jingze's nonchalant face. She wanted to rip his mouth out. Yes, he did not mention her name and he didn't directly mention a relationship, but that Weibo post was so obvious. He would be lying if he said it was not intentional. "In any case, you need to delete that Weibo post," Lin Che demanded. Gu Jingze smiled and leaned against her chair. "All right, then I will say that Lin Che does not want us to be mistaken, so I will be deleting that post." Get lost. Is that not it? Why you? Lin Che was speechless. She was so mad at Gu Jingze, but she just could not win against him. Who said Gu Jingze was cool? He was clearly a pesky little person. At the same time, Gu Jingze was still unaware of the news between his wife and someone else. Mo Hilling called Gu Jingze up in the morning. She wanted to see him. Gu Jingze arrived at Mo Hilling's door. Mo Hilling looked at him sadly with melancholy in her eyes. Gu Jingze asked, "What's wrong?" Mo Hilling said, "Why haven't I heard from you for 2 days?" Gu Jingze said, "I accompanied Lin Che back to her home for an engagement party." "What?" Mo Hilling fumed, "You've been ignoring me because of her." Gu Jingze could hear the hatred that Mo Hilling had towards Lin Che in her voice. His brows furrowed. He said in a displeased tone, "Hilling, this is not her fault. I had to marry and because of me, she was forced into this marriage as well." Mo Hilling's heart hurt as she looked at Gu Jingze. She knew that she was being impatient and had said some unpleasant things. She puckered her lips, tugged at his sleeves, and said, "But I don't like her at all." Gu Jingze knew it was natural for her to have such feelings. He said, "I know that, but I just want to say that this is all my fault. Don't blame her." Mo Hilling's lips tightened as she looked at him. "I don't like it even more when you keep speaking up for her." Jingze, I'm just so lonely. When I'm alone, I think of how you and she are together, officially married and living the life we've always wanted. Living together peacefully and happily. Do you know how I feel? I can't help but imagine things." Gu Jingze felt pain in his heart. Mo Hilling continued, "From the moment you were sick, we stuck together, but your family never approved of us. It's a lot of pressure on me, you know." Gu Jingze knew that she went through a lot for him. Mo Hilling's tears rolled down her cheeks as she said, "Can you accompany me to the villa for a walk?" Gu Jingze sighed, "All right." The two of them drove to the villa by the river. This was Gu Jingze's villa. The wonderful scenery and wooden villa made a heartwarming sight. Mo Hiling arrived feeling a lot better. She took off her coat as she watched Gu Jingze gather wood outside for the fireplace. Breathing in the scent of the wood, coupled with a movie, this was pure bliss. Mo Hiling looked at Gu Jingze, who was on one knee preparing the wood with deep concentration, the muscles on his arms flexing sexily. She could not stop staring. Chapter 48. I need to go back and settle this. Gu Jingze looked up to see Mo Hiling lying there seductively. He did not think much of it. After all, they grew up playing together. They were all too familiar with each other. It was just that Mo Hiling's chest seemed to be unusually high as she lay there, resembling a hill. It looked big, but unnatural. He had not noticed before, but he suddenly thought of Lin Che's words. Fake chests are easy to tell. It will remain standing high even when one lies down. When did Mo Hiling do her chest? He could not recall her mentioning it. Actually, Gu Jingze was not against women having cosmetic surgery. As long as she liked it, he did not care. The pursuit of beauty was human nature. However, he never heard Mo Hiling talk about it. He grew curious and asked Mo Hiling, "Hiling, when did you have cosmetic surgery?" Mo Hiling immediately raised her chest, unnaturally looking at it as she touched her chin. She did have a few places done. Cosmetic surgery was now so normal, but she definitely did not want Gu Jingze to know. She secretly went for it. After each time, she took the opportunity to go overseas for a while and returned after recovering. A man like Gu Jingze, who was too busy with work, never noticed such things. Naturally, he never asked questions like that until now. I didn't. Why did you suddenly ask? Gu Jingze glanced at her and felt like he could not look anymore. Nothing. Just asking. She looked down at her chest and thought that it should look natural. Of course, she went to the most expensive place with the best resources and best doctor. Those C-cups were not cheap. Not expecting Gu Jingze to be able to tell, she smiled and said, "My body is all natural. I have not done anything to it. You must think that it's too perfect. That's why you thought I had surgery, right?" Gu Jingze smiled as he didn't know what to say. "Yes, your body is nice." Mo Hiling replied, "But of course. I usually pay attention to my body. I do lots of yoga and maintain it well. Everybody thinks my skin is flawless. My body is perfect thanks to my mother, who was a beauty. I look like her, so I'm beautiful as well. Don't you agree that I'm beautiful?" Gu Jingze looked at her face and smiled. "Yes, you are beautiful." However, he looked at her face and thought that it was strange. If she looked like her mother, she should have single eyelids. Her eyes would not be so big and her double eyelids would not be so defined. More importantly, her chin was too sharp. Her mother was a famous round-faced beauty. But Gu Jingze kept his thoughts to himself. Looking at Mo Hiling, her skin was indeed good, but Lin Che's skin was much fairer and softer. Somehow, the image of Lin Che's porcelain skin appeared in his head. She really was fairer than most other women. Perhaps, because she was too white, so her face did not look especially outstanding. However, looking at her was like looking at a porcelain doll. She looked delicate. "Jingze, I'm talking to you. What are you thinking about?" Mo Hiling shouted and sat up unhappily. Gu Jingze got up and said, "Nothing. I was thinking that you didn't have to put in so much effort. I like you not because you're thin, but because regardless of how you look, you will always be beautiful." He still remembered how when they were young, she stumbled over to him in her little princess dress and said to him, "Brother Jingze, nobody wants to play with you. I will play with you." From that moment, he told himself that he had to treat her well. It was just that looking at Mo Hiling now, he could not help but feel that Lin Che was right. She must have done something to her chest. However, Mo Hiling not only refused to admit it, she even lied to him. Gu Jingze understood that everyone had their own beauty ideals. Perhaps she did not tell him so that she could believe her body was all natural and a God's gift, but Gu Jingze would not have minded any of it. He was only concerned with the fact that Mo Hiling would actually lie to him. However, he did not expose her. He believed that she had her own reasons. He smiled and said nothing else. He finished setting up the fireplace, but because of the weather, it did not burn much. They could only enjoy the feeling of it. The two of them sat on the sofa. Gu Jingze turned on the television and took the remote. Just as he wanted to switch to a movie, he saw the news play out on screen. After Gu Jingyu hinted at a relationship, there were no further comments from the crew. The management has also made it harder to pry. Gu Jingyu has never been rumored with another female actress, so everyone is anticipating this relationship with optimism. The screen flashed an image of Gu Jingyu and Lin Che together. Mo Hilling immediately recognized Gu Jingyu. What's going on? Why is Jingyu fooling around with Lin Che? Those words make Gu Jingze's face turn completely black. Mo Hilling saw his face and thought that he was angry. She put more weight in her tone. This Lin Che is too unscrupulous. How can she get together with your brother? How shameless. Gu Jingze said, this has nothing to do with Lin Che. Mo Hilling listened and said quietly, it takes two hands to clap. How could it have nothing to do with her? I believe Lin Che is not like this, he said adamantly. Mo Hilling snorted, you believe her? That is so naive of you. I have seen too many uncultured girls like her. They would do anything for money. What's more is that she's in the entertainment industry. Enough. Gu Jingze got up from his seat. Mo Hilling was taken aback. Immediately, she followed Gu Jingze and got up angrily, holding back her tears as she shouted, you yelled at me, Gu Jingze. You yelled at me for this woman. Gu Jingyu paused and looked at Mo Hilling, it's not because of her. Jingyu is also in the entertainment industry and he's also not that kind of person. There must be a reason behind this whole matter. Gu Jingze got up and decided not to stay any longer. He took his coat and said, I'm going to settle this matter. You're going now, Mo Hilling said unhappily, you said you would keep me company. Gu Jingze replied, Hilling, this news will cause a lot of trouble if people see it. It's best I hurry and take care of it. Mo Hilling gritted her teeth. He was right. She stomped her foot on the ground, I don't care. You must make it up to me. I hardly get to be with you and now, you're leaving. Gu Jingze sighed. He was in no mood to entertain her. He smiled patronizingly and said, okay, I definitely will make it up to you. Mo Hilling forced a smile but deep down, all she wanted to do was crush that annoying Lin Che to death. Chapter 49. We can use a more direct method. Gu Jingze soon arrived home. Qin Hao was already at the door. Upon seeing Gu Jingze return, he said softly, Sir, it all started with third young master's Weibo post. Although he did not state clearly, the news speculates that third young master was. Gu Jingze turned around, was what? Was confessing to madam. He had to be joking. That was ridiculous. Gu Jingze's face blackened. His brows creased like crinkled clothes, skin rolled into hills and hills. Gu Jingze saw that there were many comments below Gu Jingyu's Weibo post. I think they look quite good together after a while. If they're together, so be it. This Lin Che looks rather pleasant to the eyes. At least she looks different from the usual famous people. Not bad. As long as Jingyu decided, we approve. Congratulations on being together. Last long. Gu Jingze turned off his phone and looked up, his face as dark as a stormy sky. It gave off a vibe so scary that no one dared to look directly at him. Sir. I thought you guys stopped all news about third young master. Qin Hao felt cold sweat on his back. Sir, we did. It's just that this is the first time that third young master has announced a relationship, so some tabloids continued. Relationship. Gu Jingze stared coldly. Qin Hao knew that he said the wrong thing and immediately said, of course, the reporters don't know that third young master was only joking. Gu Jingze raised his hand to silence him. He pressed his brows and then walked in. Lin Che did not know what was going on. She had just got back from the set, mentally and physically drained. She cooked some instant noodles to comfort her broken soul. She was just done when she heard the door. Gu Jingze was home. Lin Che was holding a huge bowl of noodles, looking very happy with herself. She wore a small yellow apron with lace at the sides. It looked cute and it reflected the warm smile on her petite, delicate face. Gu Jingze, you're back, she smiled as she put down her noodles that were almost burning her fingers. She pressed her fingers to her earlobes to cool down. Gu Jingze glanced over to the bowl of noodles and said, I'm hungry too. Oh, Lin Che saw his expression and said, shall I cook you a bowl too? Yes, okay, he said as he casually put down the coat in his hand and sat down. Lin Che pouted, how unceremonious. She returned to the kitchen and picked up the vegetable knife. She sliced some vegetables, ham, and cracked an egg. Gu Jingze looked at her and thought that there were some heartwarming moments with her. In a regular household, the husband usually waited at the table while his wife cooked in the kitchen. An aroma filled the air. Lin Che brought both bowls to the dining table. Gu Jingze looked at them and asked, why does your bowl have more noodles and vegetables than mine? Lin Che replied, it's not that much more. Without a warning, Gu Jingze reached over for her bowl and took it, I'm eating yours. Hey, Lin Che wanted to stop him but he had already started eating his noodles. Lin Che could only look down at her fingers, I ate a bite of those noodles. Gu Jingze looked up at her seriously. Lin Che felt uncomfortable with his stare. She quickly waved her hands and said, why? It's not like I made you eat it. You were picky. Gu Jingze reached for her bowl and took a huge mouthful. Hey, Gu Jingze, you. All things should be fair between husband and wife, right? Gu Jingze justified his reasoning. Lin Che said depressingly, I'm not mean like you. It's not like I did it on purpose. Gu Jingze lifted his head and snorted. Lin Che's eyes moved. She smiled widely and said, it's just exchanging saliva. You eat mine and I eat yours. There's no big deal, right? Gu Jingze's face darkened. How could a sentence like that be so warming? Lin Che continued, in fact, exchanging saliva actually has health benefits. It boosts the immune system and prevents catching a cold. Come on, let's continue. Gu Jingze grunted and looked at Lin Che, if that's the case, there's an even more direct method of exchanging saliva. This is too troublesome. Huh, Lin Che looked at him, puzzled. His dark eyes moved to her plump lips that were glistening in the light. Lin Che felt it. She suddenly understood what he meant. Her face turned red. She covered it with her hands. She was speechless. Gu Jingze looked at her standing angrily over there, unable to take back her words. He grinned happily. However, his eyes could not stop looking at her lips. Feeling her stare at him, he forced himself to look away. Lin Che snorted and sat down. Gu Jingze said as he ate, Lin Che, have you nothing to say to me? Seeing how she was still in the mood to cook noodles, his heart began to burn up. Lin Che replied, like what? Gu Jingze pulled his face, like maybe something about tabloids and rumors. Lin Che reacted, about that. It's just a rumor. I don't know what to do either. Do you want to tell Jingyu about us? So that Jingyu has issues with the family. If he knew, he might just announce it to the whole world. Do you want everyone to know about us? Of course not. Lin Che shook her head vigorously. Was she mad to announce her marriage with Gu Jingze at this time? The news out there was already overwhelming. How would she be able to continue acting? Gu Jingze looked at her face ridden with disdain. Although he wanted to resist, he could not help but start to feel sad. Do you not want people to know about us so badly? He asked. Lin Che replied, of course. We'll be divorced sooner or later. Then, it'll be my second marriage. Also, I still want to act. The company does not know that I'm married. My contract stated that I cannot marry for 3 years. I'm already violating it. Gu Jingze looked at her deeply and then lowered his head, picking at his noodles. Gu Jingze said, although you don't want to expose our relationship, you shouldn't overdo the rumors with Gu Jingyu, right? This I guarantee you, I really know nothing about. This, she also had no idea why Gu Jingyu was crazy enough to post a Weibo message like that. She felt that Gu Jingyu was a rebellious child. With no rumors and under the tight management of the company, he decided to create some rumors himself. It was all Gu Jingyu's doing. It has nothing to do with me, she could only say so much. Gu Jingze replied, I know he is rebellious, but he is never unreasonable. If you tell him outright that you don't like it, he will respect your opinion. I did, but he refused to delete his Weibo post. Lin Che had literally begged him to delete it. Gu Jingyu only continued to poke fun at her and not take her request seriously. Gu Jingze said, "You have to reject him directly. Don't let him harass you. If you don't know how to do that, let me help you." Huh. He continued, "Give me your phone. I'll help you send him a text." With a cold expression, he held out his hand. Chapter 50. Did you fall in love at first sight with me? Lin Che looked at his grave expression. Maybe it was so unbearable for him that he was going to get really angry. She took out her phone and looked at it, still not quite willing to hand it over to him. Gu Jingze did not say anything and grabbed her phone. "Hey, what are you doing?" Lin Che asked seriously. She was unhappy that he took her phone just like that. Lin Che quickly snatched it back and said, "I don't have his number. We've only been messaging through WeChat." She took her phone, opened the WeChat app, and said, "I can text him myself." As she said this, she thought about what to type. "Gu Jingyu, I don't think it's right of you to dupe your audience. Your Weibo post is too misleading. Your fans think that you're in love, but that's not true at all. I think it's best that you tell the truth." Gu Jingze frowned while she typed. One moment, she paused, and the next moment, she was all serious. Deleting, typing, and hesitating. He impatiently grabbed her phone to look. "Hey, what are you doing?" she said as he raised his brows at her message. "This is a rejection. You're having a discussion with him." Gu Jingze glanced at her. Well, Lin Che did not want to come out too strong. If she offended Gu Jingyu, she would not know what the future held for her. Gu Jingze snorted and said, "I'm going to help you write." You, quote. Lin Che knew that he would not do it nicely, so she quickly took her phone. Gu Jingze stood up tall and raised the phone up high with his arms. The petite Lin Che jumped up and down, trying to reach for it. Gu Jingze stood there calmly and quickly typed, "Gu Jingyu, I'm actually already married. I love my husband very much. Your actions make me feel like I have let him down. So, please don't post such things that will easily mislead people and cause rumors. It is for the good of both of us." Lin Che saw him write a long paragraph, but it was too blurry so she couldn't make the words out. Lin Che grew anxious and said, "Gu Jingze, give it back. I want to do it myself. I don't need your help." Gu Jingze did not listen and continued typing furiously. As soon as Gu Jingze pressed send, a reply came from Gu Jingyu. It read, "Are you seriously lying about being married just to avoid me?" Gu Jingze's lips curled up. "Do you want me to show you the certificate? I'm really married and it really disgusts me that you would get me involved." Disgusted? In what way am I not being good that it makes you hate me? I thought you told me before that I was your highly respected senior. She had actually told Gu Jingyu that. Gu Jingze could not help but sigh as he replied, "Those words were just to compliment you. I thought you would understand. Since you decided to drag me into this mess, don't tell me you actually like me. Now that you mention it, I do quite like you." Gu Jingze almost wanted to puke. This Gu Jingyu was really asking for a death wish. Gu Jingze directly replied, "Sorry, I don't like your type. I like my husband's type, a man who makes me feel secure. From the moment I saw him, it was love at first sight. I had to marry him. I have no interest in anyone else and especially not your gigolo type." He had just sent the message when Lin Che climbed up the table behind him. Her arms wrapped around his neck as she climbed onto his back and tried to snatch her phone back. "Gu Jingze, give me my phone back," she shouted and grabbed his hand. Gu Jingze was not finished. He wanted to see what Gu Jingyu's reply would be, but he felt that Lin Che had become so anxious. She bit his arm. Pain filled Gu Jingze. This damned idiot woman actually bit him. He shouted and released the phone in his hand. It fell on the floor with a loud thud. Lin Che exclaimed, "Gu Jingze, I'm going to kill you." Gu Jingze felt that she was going to fall. Remembering that her leg was just recovering, he quickly grabbed onto both of them from behind. She had just stopped using the wheelchair, but she had to walk slowly. Had she already forgotten the pain? He carried her on his back and refused to let her move. "You better be careful. What's going to happen if you fell?" Lin Che was too busy looking around for her phone to listen to him. She did not realize that her gold and silver necklace was grinding on his back. He felt her tender bosom press against his body. So obvious. Gu Jingze. Don't move, calm down. Gu Jingze's body grew hot. He felt himself tightening up. No, I don't want to. Gu Jingze, you had no right to snatch my phone and drop it. You must pay for it, she demanded. Even though she had her arms around his neck, he could not help but feel his body tremble. Only then did they realize. She was leaning against him, his hands firmly supporting her butt and his shoulders tense. Her chest was pressed against his back and her face brushed against his cheek. She was right beside his ear and she could smell the clear, masculine cologne from his neck. She immediately let go and coughed awkwardly. She did not mean to do that. Gu Jingze finally let her go as well. She stood on the ground, too awkward to look at him in the eye. Gu Jingze felt better. His heart, which was initially racing, finally calmed down. He looked at the woman in front of him. He really felt like strangling her. Naturally, Lin Che felt embarrassed. She could still feel the warmth of his body. It was so hot and so different from women. It was lingering. She suddenly remembered her phone that fell on the ground. She hurriedly picked it up and inspected it. The screen had fallen apart. She looked up, depressed and screaming, Gu Jingze, you'll pay for this. Gu Jingze looked at her indifferently and snorted while glancing at the screen. She checked her WeChat to find a reply from Gu Jingze. I'm sorry, I didn't know I was such an annoyance to you. I won't disturb you anymore. The next line read, and, I'm not a gigolo. Lin Che was close to tears. She scrolled up to read all the texts that Gu Jingze had sent. She turned to him and yelled, Gu Jingze, I'm not shameless like you. I did not fall in love at first sight with you. Why else did you drug me then? Was it not to get in bed with me? Quote. Lin Che did not know what to say. Lin Che only thought about how she must have offended Gu Jingze. What was she going to do about the next filming set or the promotions for the show? Not to mention, Gu Jingze's influential power was tremendous. If he wanted to take revenge, how was Lin Che going to live in the future?